The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Private Lending as an Investment Vehicle. Before we start, I would just like to do a little sound check to make sure people are hearing me. So I'm going to call on a couple of people and let me know if you can hear me when I say your name. Dean, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, Dean.
Good evening.
And Everett, can you hear me? Everett, can you hear me? I hope Everett gets his sound. Gary, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Welcome, Gary Denny from Mexico. Okay. Thank you all for being here this evening. My name is Dave Goldberg. My company is called The Investor's Source. We are a hard money lender, which means we make and broker private loans to real estate investors. I want to give an apology to some of you who have been waiting for about 6 months for this presentation. I really appreciate your patience and thank you for hanging in there. The format of tonight's evening, we're going to go for about 45 minutes with the formal presentation till about 7:45. From 7:45 to 8 o'clock, we're going to open up the mics to those on the line who are current lenders or who have done some private lending with or without the services of a broker to talk about your experience as a private lender. And then from 8 to 8:15, we'll have an open mic Q&A session. Ask any questions you want from both me and anybody else, any current lenders on the line. We have some great resources, and this would be a great time to pick people's brains. Speaking of questions, throughout the presentation, I'm going to keep people muted throughout the presentation, but if you would like to ask a question, there should be a place on your control panel to type in a question. I will try to keep my eye on that question board and try to answer questions throughout the presentation, so we'll keep it interactive. When we get to the Q&A session during the final 15 minutes, there is another place on the control panel for you to raise your hand electronically. So do that and I will call on you. Okay. Also, this presentation is going to cover two major aspects. One is the whole area of being a private lender and what that involves, and the other is using a broker. And if it seems through the presentation that it's weighted towards the broker part of it, please forgive me for that. That's what I do and that's what I'm used to. So I will try to keep it as balanced as possible between those two things. So let's get started. If you do need to leave the presentation early, don't feel bad at all. Just do what you need to do. If you want to take down my information right here, feel free to call me or email me anytime after the presentation. Probably wait till tomorrow, but I'm available. Would love to talk to you. Okay. And any delays you hear are probably me just getting used to the technology. So let's define what is private lending. For our purposes, private lending is making a private loan from an individual or entity to a real estate investor. And that is generally for fix and flips, for rental properties, or for construction loans. The type of loans that we do are one loan to one lender. So we don't pool funds at this point. That could be something we do down the road, but it's one lender funds one loan, and each of those loans is backed by a first deed of trust. So you have the protection of a piece of property backing up the loan. First question I usually get from new lenders is, so why doesn't the investor get a bank loan? Actually, the biggest reason is that the borrower needs funding quickly. You know that getting a loan from a bank is normally going to take you a month or 2 months to get approved and to get closed, whereas coming to a private lender or to a broker, you can sometimes get a loan closed in as few as 3 or 4 days. And we try to give it a couple of weeks at least so I don't get my lenders too angry at me. Um, so, um, so many deals, especially in Colorado, require that you need to get funded quickly. If you're buying an investment property, they tend to get snatched up extremely quickly, and often the one who can close the quickest can get the deal under contract. It's not always price, but sometimes it's a matter of getting a loan closed very quickly, and we can do that as a private lender. Banks generally won't lend on distressed properties. That's changing a little bit, but for the most part, most banks are still very reluctant to lend for a fix and flip loan or to fix up a property, and they are not going to lend the kind of money that an investor might need to fix up a distressed property. One of the biggest reasons that investors come to us as private lenders is that those are the majority of the loans that we make are loans to take a property and put some money into it. And we will lend not only on the purchase price, but we will lend oftentimes the full rehab amount as well. The down payment to a bank is usually much higher than with a private lender. Since we are lending, our policy is to lend on the after repair value, so we can, meaning the value of the property after it's fixed up, which usually means that we can lend more than a bank would. And that can help out the average investor who may not have a huge amount of money to put down. And we protect ourselves by taking a big chunk of that money, putting it in escrow for the rehab, and not releasing that until the work is actually done. So we can lend more, but we can protect ourselves as well, protect you, the lender. Banks have limits on the number of loans, sometimes imposed by themselves and sometimes imposed by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And we're way at the bottom, and some people find this hard to believe, that the borrower cannot qualify. People tend to think that's the main reason they come to a private lender, and that really is not always the case. I have had many, many borrowers who could qualify for a bank loan, but for the reasons stated above, they come to us and we can actually do a better job for them than a bank. It might cost them more, but it's worth coming to a private lender in many different cases. So why should you become a private lender? Well, that's why you're here tonight. Number one I put there is contribution to your community. Now, you might find that a surprise, but we tend to attract a lot of lenders who really enjoy seeing where their money is going, whether that is fixing up an eyesore house that's been just sitting there for years and nobody's done anything to it, or allowing someone to have a new home to live in, or constructing a new home from scratch. The money that we are putting to use tends to do some really good projects. I'm really proud of that. I know our lenders are, and our borrowers are as well. So I put it as number one. But I have nothing against making money either. And I believe private lending is one of the excellent ways for an investor, a place for an investor to put his money. The note rates that we are offering on an everyday basis are between 12 and 14%. You also have that security of the first deed of trust. So many of us have lost money in the stock market. When something goes wrong there, you really have no recourse. If you don't get out, you may lose a boatload of money. And in private lending, you have that property backing up the loan, even if something does go wrong. And for the most part, it's passive income. So especially if you use a broker, we like to make this process as easy and as pain-free as possible for you. So we do so much of the dirty work for you. We'll get into what a lot of those things are. But we like to make it such that You basically write the check and sit back and get checks coming into you. Now, you, of course, are welcome to do as much due diligence as you like on the deal and the borrower, and we invite you to, I mean, we would never discourage you from doing that. We like to do that for you, but you are welcome to visit the property or look over the borrower's credit report or look at the deal analysis and see that that it's going to be a profitable deal. So those things you're welcome to do, but you can also choose to do very little and know that, especially with a broker, things are being done right for you. So do we qualify just the deal or the borrower as well? Hey folks, don't be afraid to ask any questions. I'm looking at my board. Don't see any yet, and feel free. So the answer is we qualify both the deal and the borrower. And how do we qualify the deal? Let me make sure. First thing we do, and probably the basis for all of what a good deal is, to make a correct internal property valuation, meaning in our office, we do a very good job of pulling our own comps, pulling up tax records, making sure that we feel really comfortable that we know the property really well, and we do our own internal valuation of the property. Based on that, we run the numbers to make sure that the deal would be profitable for a fix and flip, or that if it was a rental property, the cash flow would be there, or if it's a construction project, it makes sense and that it can be built for what they say and can be sold for what they say, and it'll make money. We then verify our internal property valuation with an external, an appraisal or a broker price opinion. So usually we find that those appraisals or BPOs come in very close to what our projected value was. And like I said, I think we do a really good job. So the key is we don't want to ever overvalue a property. We tend to be conservative and sometimes undervalue a property. We get the repair budget from our borrowers to make sure that the money that they are putting in their budget is sufficient to cover all of the repairs so that they don't run out of money in the middle of a project. So we like to lend as much of that repair budget as possible, because that actually is extra protection for you as the lender, since we escrow those funds and don't release them until the borrower has done some of the work. Then we release funds. They do more work, we release more funds. We do all of the title. We make sure all of the title work is done, and we get a title commitment from the title company, so you don't have to deal with any title issues at closing, and it's free and clear title to the borrower. And then I qualify every deal myself with a property visit, and that's kind of rare in the lending world. I know a lot of the lenders on the line do it, but there are also a lot of lenders out there who never visit a property, and I like to put my eyes and my eyes on the property and my feet in the property and see what's going on, and are they near a railroad track, and is there a power station nearby, and all those things that could both bring down the value of a property or raise it. Now we have a bunch of questions here. Do we ever farm the evaluations out? You know, that's in general, no. That's a big function of what we do, is that we do all of the kind of work that I just mentioned, the valuing, the running the numbers. We do that inside of our own organization to make sure we've got a really good handle on the whole deal. I like to really know what's going on, and like I said, seeing the property is part of that. So how do we qualify the borrower? Well, in the old days of hard money lending, and many of the lenders could tell you that as well, many lenders didn't qualify the borrower. They based the loan on the strength of the deal itself, and for the most part, the majority of our decision is based on the deal and the strength of the deal and the value of the property. But we want to know who we're dealing with, so we qualify the borrower very much as well. In fact, some of our borrowers get a little bit annoyed that we ask for too much, but we feel, like I said, it's really important to know who we're dealing with and do we like this person? Do we feel a good feeling about them? So how do we qualify them? First, we do pull a credit report, and we look for the big things first, the bankruptcies, the foreclosures, the tax problems, IRS problems. And then we do look at credit score, but that we rarely will make a credit decision on credit score. Now, we do take it very seriously, and if someone has a low score, say anywhere under 675, we will at least get their, we will talk to them, find out what happened. Did their house go upside down in the crash in 2008, cause them to be upside down and cause them to go into foreclosure? And of course, that's going to affect their credit for a long time. So if they have a good story and they seem like they have turned things around and all their payments are on time, there's a pretty good chance that we will approve them as a borrower. We do pull tax returns for 2 years, mainly to make sure they were filed, also to see if they have any problems with the IRS, and we will also verify financial information from those. We have them fill out personal financial statements, and everything they put on their financial statement will be backed by documentation, so we know it's for real. And like I said, we use our gut feeling as well about, is this someone I really want to lend to? I think our documents are ironclad, but if something goes wrong, it's really nice to be able to be working with someone that you can work with, that you have some trust in, and that you can, you can resolve a situation that may be a sticky situation. So how much will you lend, or I lend, you the lender, how much will we lend the borrower and at what terms? The answer to that is you call the shots. Now, we are putting these deals together, and we do have a normal everyday structure that we offer to our borrowers, and we'll get to that in a moment. But basically, before we even start with you as a lender, we have you tell us what you're comfortable with. So we send you our lender qualification and profile form, which first tells us if you are qualified to be a lender, and you have to have some investing background to be qualified to be a lender. You don't need to be accredited, but you do need to show you have a certain savvy in investing. And then we have a profile as well, where you tell us what you're comfortable with. So in other words, what loan to value? Will you lend 50%, or will you lend 70% of what a property is worth? What parts of Colorado will you lend in? What neighborhoods are you comfortable with? What kind of experience level do you demand of the borrower, and how much money do you want him to put into the deal? So we take all those things seriously, and we find loans for you that meet those parameters, and then we send them your way. But we do have some general terms that we offer on an everyday basis, and most of our lenders fall into these parameters. So the loans go from 6 to 24 months. We charge 3 to 4 points, and that comes to us. That's how we get paid. The note rates are in general 12 to 14%, and that goes all to you, the lender. We don't work on a spread at all. The entire note and payment from the note goes to you, the lender. We lend up to 70% of the after repair value. So like I said, that does give a lot more flexibility in funding deals where the property might need a lot of work, but again, we always protect ourselves with keeping a very significant amount of money in escrow, not released to the borrower until they have done what they said they're going to do. We escrow the rehab funds, and we do require monthly interest-only payments. So what about loan servicing? That's really just collecting payments, right? Well, not exactly. So here's some of the things that complete loan servicing entails. And I tried to make this list look formidable because it really is. Every day we find something new about uh, doing loan servicing correctly, and we take it really seriously because we service all the loans, and we want to make sure that those loans are being handled the way they should be. So here's a few things. Collecting and forwarding the monthly note payments, tracking the loan balances, collecting, forwarding, tracking, and billing late note payments. Fortunately, we haven't had many of those. Confirming that property insurance is current, confirming property taxes are paid, escrowing, tracking, and dispersing rehab funds, arranging rehab inspections and collecting lien releases, tracking interest paid. Hold on, sorry about that. Oh yeah, interest paid and issuing tax statements at the end of the year. The 1098s and 1096s. Lately, we've had a couple of our lenders express great appreciation for that, in that at the end of the year, they don't have to bother with totaling up all the interest that's been paid by the borrower and figuring out where to send it. We take care of all that for you. If you do lending on your own, just keep in mind that that is something that you would need to do. It's the tax forms that need to go out. And also everything involved with generating letters to title companies and everything with communicating with the title companies. Hold on. There we go. Thank you for holding on. All right, so who services the loan and what's the cost? Well, I think I already answered that. We do, and it's absolutely free. That's one of the services we provide to you as your broker, is taking care of all those things that go along with loan servicing. Okay, so where does one come up with the funds to fund the loan? Many places. First, you can go into any personal accounts you have, any stocks you're holding, and you can lend personally. Also, many of our lenders lend right out of their retirement accounts, out of IRAs, 401ks, family trusts, which may or may not be retirement accounts. Also, you can combine funds with others, with family and friends. Now, we are not licensed to split up loans, and we can't lend to more than one lender. But what you can do is actually get together with others and put your money together in an entity, form an LLC or a trust, and as long as the lender is just that entity, then that's fine. Like I said, there may be a time in the future where we do some pooling of funds, and but at the moment, it's just one lender for one loan. And last thing is, you could borrow the funds. Now, we don't necessarily recommend that strategy, but if you go into a HELOC or a line of credit and borrow at 5 or 6% and lend at 10 or 12%, you've got a nice spread there. But you know, you got to be careful with that kind of thing. That's not for everybody. Okay, so what are the advantages and disadvantages of investing in a note in deed of trust versus a pool of funds? And remember, all of our investments now are a single note and deed of trust. Number one is a higher note rate. So if you are funding a note and deed of trust, you're getting 10 to 12% note rate. I can't quote returns, but I can quote the note rate. And returns generally in a pooled fund, it's hard to find a pool fund that's going to return that rate these days. The deed of trust and property as direct collateral, you may get the property. In other words, an advantage is if something goes wrong with the loan, you have that direct collateral of the deed of trust, and if it went all the way through to foreclosure, you could wind up with the property. To some lenders, that's an advantage. They're very comfortable taking back a property, and they would actually embrace that. We'll get to the other side of that in a moment. And then poor old Bernie. So there's still a stigma about investing in pooled funds, and you don't have to worry about that. When you have a note and deed of trust, you are the only one lending on that, and if something goes wrong, you call the shots and you make the decisions about what next steps are. Of course, you work those in conjunction with us. I work very closely with you so that we avoid those scenarios, and there are lots of options before we get to foreclosure, like giving the property a deed in lieu or selling the note to another investor. Many things we can do, but we're there with you all the way. If something happens, we're right by your side. And are there disadvantages of a note and deed versus a pooled fund? Of course. So the time between loans. When you fund a loan, you're going to be making the returns or the note rate we said throughout the time you're getting a payment. Eventually that loan is going to pay off, and there is going to be some time between that loan and the next loan that you fund. And that downtime does affect your overall return for the year. But the commitment that we make to all of our current lenders is that we commit to you to keep your money working as hard as possible before we entertain putting any other lender's money to work. Now, for you new lenders, that could be a disadvantage, but there are loans to go around. But we want everyone to know that once you invest with the investor source, we want to keep your money working hard, and we will make that commitment to you that your money will be kept working before anyone else new money gets put to work. And of course, you have the choice on those loans, on the next loan to fund. The deed of trust property as direct collateral, you may get the property. Same. That's one of the advantages we listed as well. So that can be an advantage or a disadvantage. So some of our lenders are comfortable getting a property back, and others, that's the last thing in the world they would want. Now, we have never had to do that, knock on wood, in our business yet, but it is a possibility. And you doing this kind of lending, you should be at least prepared for that possibility. And of course, we're doing everything in our power to make sure that doesn't happen. In the old days, some lenders used to lend to try to get the property back, hoping the note would default. We don't think in those terms, and if that's what you're looking at, we are probably not the right broker for you to work with, but it is a strategy that other lenders have used, I hope, mainly in the past. A note and deed of trust is not quite as passive as a pooled fund. In a pooled fund, you basically give them your money and they make all the decisions. A note and deed of trust, you have to decide which ones you want to fund, and then, like I said, the amount of due diligence that you want to do in addition to what we do, that's up to you. And notes and deeds are probably not as liquid as a pooled fund, although you can sell your note and deed of trust if you needed to, and we've had lenders do that. But there's no organized market for these kind of sales, but there are people out there who will buy your note. In a pooled fund, they all have different requirements of when you can sell your funds. You can't assume in a pooled fund you can liquidate immediately either, but it tends to be a little bit easier to liquidate in a pooled fund than with a note and deed of trust. Okay, so why not do this yourself and cut out the middleman? Well, the answer is you can, and we've actually got a number of lenders on the line who do that. They make their own loans, and they use a broker like the Investor Source to help them out. And so I'm going to give. So I wouldn't say to you never entertain that idea, but I would say to you that you should really think it through carefully, because I think any lender on the line who does it themselves will tell you that it is a lot of work. It takes a lot of time, and you really need to commit to doing it and doing the steps right to do it. But here are some of the reasons I'll give you. Again, another long list here. Very detail-oriented business, many, many steps in funding every loan, finding the deals and doing all the marketing, screening the deals and the borrowers, doing the correct property valuation, having access to the MLS or another valuation service, and doing a property visit, creating all the loan documents, getting them, through a lawyer and having the lawyer approve them all, and then executing them, meaning filling them all out, making sure they're correct, and you don't want to make mistakes on loan documents, dealing with all the issues of the title company, everything involved with rehab, as I mentioned, the rehab draws and the draw agreements, and figuring out the rehab budgets. That's a lot to do that correctly. And then the 15 or 20 steps I mentioned with loan servicing. So there's just a lot in this business. Real quick story, there's a fellow who teaches private lending in a weekend course. His name is Dykes Bodiford, and I have sent some of my lenders to take his course, and they go there thinking they're going to learn everything they need to cut out the middleman and be a private lender themselves. At the end of the weekend, what winds up happening is that they see how involved this business is, and even though they've learned a tremendous amount, they realize that doing it all themselves is not for them. So having a professional handle all of the, I call it the dirty work, can be a very nice thing for your lifestyle. So my friends, brother-in-laws, cousins, uncle, stepfather did this and lost everything. I think we all have heard a story like this, and we know somebody who said they've invested in something in real estate and they've lost it all. And I'm not denying that could have happened. I do take these stories with a grain of salt. Probably it's most likely that happened in a pooled fund, although I'm not knocking pooled funds, because we may very well be doing pooled funds in the near future, but investing in a single note and deed of trust has all of the protections that I mentioned, and it's rare that someone will lose everything in this type of investment. But are there risks? Sure there are. So here are a few of them, and we disclose these all to you in our disclosure statement with every loan that we send out, but here's kind of a recap of some of them. Foreclosure is a risk. A property or the loan could go bad, and it could go through all the steps that we take for it not to get that far, and it could go to foreclosure. And if that happens, there is the possibility of the loss of principal. But even if it goes to foreclosure, you're not necessarily going to lose principal, because the property would be sold on the courthouse steps, and if the bid comes in, and if the amount of money that's bid to buy the property covers your loan, then you get paid off. So it really, in that way, it comes down to, did we do a good job evaluating the property? Since we're only lending 70% on it, if it gets to the courthouse steps, you've got a 30% cushion in there. Even there, chances are you're going to get most or all of your principal back. And if not, of course, you can get the property. Lack of liquidity. Like I mentioned, selling a note and deed of trust can be done, and it's done every day of the year. However, the Department of Regulatory Agencies says there's no organized market for selling your note and deed of trust like there is the stock market, but it can be done. And then what about bankruptcy? Well, bankruptcy is an issue that we do take seriously, and a big part of our screening of the borrower is to make sure that we are not heading in that direction. But if bankruptcy did occur, you do not lose your claim to the property. You still have the first deed of trust on the property. What's going to happen is that property and everything owned by the person the filer, will be brought in and the judge will look at everything, but that does not take away your claim to the property. And when things are sorted out and things are ready to be distributed, you still have first claim on that property. So there is protection there, and it does not wipe you out. Okay, so what are the next steps if you would like to become a private lender? By the way, we do have a website which we encourage you to go visit. And this little chart here of the steps involved with private lending with the investor's source anyway are listed there. So you can look those over. But first of all, contact us after the webinar, and we will send you that lender qualification and profile form I was telling you about, and we'll get a really good idea of what you're looking for in a loan and what you're comfortable with. And I'll follow that up with hopefully a face-to-face conversation with you. We can do it over the telephone as well, but I like to really further clarify what your investing goals and your comfort level is. Then we start sending you loan profiles for your consideration. You're, of course, never forced to fund any particular loan. You get to see every loan profile and look at all the factors before you make your decision. And we consider ourselves very transparent and disclose all of the factors of a loan, both good and bad, in our loan profile and loan description. And then you fund the loans and watch those checks come in. So here is my contact information. Most of you probably have this already. Feel free to take it down. We're pretty much at the end of our formal presentation. I think we've gotten through most of everything. And now I'm going to, the next part of the presentation, let me see if I can get that back. Oops. Okay, sorry about that. We lost our screen. Let me see if I can get that up. All right, hopefully you got my information down, and if not, just let's see. My website is www.theinvestorssource.com, and it's all listed there. Okay, so the next part of our presentation is we are going to invite those on the line who are current lenders or have done some lending in the past with or without a broker to share a little bit of their lending experience, and we would just love to hear from you. So there should be a little icon of a hand, or maybe it says somewhere to raise your hand, and I will call on you, or I will give you the mic and you could speak. And I have to scroll through my list a little bit, so give me a moment if you raise your hand if you would like to say something, lenders. We've got Marty who would like to say something. Marty,
can you
there?
hear me?
I can hear you.
Can
I
you
hope.
hear?
Can you hear me, Marty?
I can hear you. Yes.
Great. Welcome.
I'm just amazed. I'm amazed on the technology here. That you can actually hear me sitting in my living room here.
Yes, likewise.
All right. I guess the question is I see all the servicing is done for you, and that's included in the 3 or 4 points that you get. Are there any points that are paid to the actual lender?
Okay, good. And actually, no, I'll leave the mic on. In general, no. In general, if we can get a loan rate of 12 to 14%, we usually will divide how the payment comes in. Well, the complete payment will go to the lender and the points will come to the investor's source. At times, I have to make a deal with a borrower and lower the interest rate a little bit. And if I do that, I would compensate by giving a point or so to the lender. but in general, that's how we work those terms.
And all the loan costs are paid by the borrower at the closing?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Marty.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, any current lenders out there like to say a word? Okay, I think we have one here. Vasant, can you hear me? Vasant, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Dave.
I think, can you center yourself in front of your mic like you have done before?
Sure. Is that better now?
That sounds good. Vasant is one of our current lenders or has done some lending. Go ahead, Vasant.
Hi, Dave, and the rest of the group. I I just wanted to say, Dave, that your presentation was very good. I wish I'd heard it before I started lending.
Thank you.
But yeah, I feel very passionately about private lending. I think it's a great way for at least some of your investable funds. The portion of funds that perhaps you want a certain degree of stability and a certain amount of income every month that you can count on. Now, I don't say don't expect your money to be invested fully at all times. Sometimes you may not be able to find a good borrower, so your money will just be sitting in your bank account. But if you want a good alternative to, say, a dividend-paying stock, or want to get out of the roller coaster ride of the stock market, this is a good way to use at least part of your funds, and that is what I do. I have my daughter's college education fund in the stock market because she has a lot of years to go. But a lot of my day-to-day living expenses are paid out of private lending. So I honestly believe that this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, although it has been around much before sliced bread. And in the past, I think it's been around since biblical times. In the past, private lending was done, with a handshake. Now that's not possible, and so one has to protect oneself. And it's done all over the world. I'm from India. In Asia, it's done everywhere. Very prevalent, although not very much talked about. So I kind of was lucky to stumble on this way of making my assets work for me, or making my money work for me. And it was, what they say, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And there was a lot of serendipitous events in my life when I was ready to do something like this. I wanted to be involved in real estate without getting my hands dirty. I'd done it all, and I wanted something a little more relaxing. I wanted to be involved in real estate, be involved with the brick and mortar of real estate, and this allowed me to do it. I won't get into how I got into this business, but I've met a lot of people, met a lot of brokers, and decided that brokering was the best way for me. Instead of me going out and doing the legwork, I decided to stay with a broker, and I actually have more than one. All brokers are not similar. You've got to be very comfortable with the broker. The broker has to be somewhat technically savvy. Every broker is a little different. Some brokers are not as tech savvy as others. For example, some will almost go by the seat of their pants. They're so well known in the community, know the borrower so well that sometimes, they wouldn't come to me with like a real solid formal business case or a formal exit strategy, for example. Some are more adept with using the newer technology like DocuSign so that you don't have to go to the title company. In the beginning when I started, I actually insisted that I meet the borrower and I actually meet at a title company where the loan was done. But as I've become more comfortable with the whole process, I don't do that anymore. So all brokers are a little different, and you have to get used to how they function. They of course have to be scrupulously honest, and they also have to be considerable. They need to have some substance to them. For example, I prefer to deal with brokers who have been around for a while, who've got a good reputation and have a reputation to protect. If a loan goes bad, I've had a loan go bad, and the broker made it whole out of his own funds. So it's very, very important. Of course, he made it whole to me out of his own funds, but then he went ahead and worked on going through the legal process to get his funds from the borrower, and that takes time. So you've got to think about that too. You've got to think about having enough resources that in case a loan goes bad, you need to be able to ride it through. So that's a couple of things. So diversification among brokers is important. I've got 2 or 3 brokers that I work with, and each has their own personality and different ways of doing things. I also diversify. Diversification is important among brokers and also geographically. I lend in Denver. I've lent in Colorado Springs, in Canyon City, in Boulder, in Spokane, Washington. I think this is a great business to be in, provided you are aware of the caveats. Diversification is important. You need to have, this should be just part of your portfolio, not the entire one. You need to diversify how you're investing your money. Geographical diversification is important. Diversification among borrowers is important. You can't be going to the same borrower, but rather spread your funds around. Spread the loans, number of loans among the amounts of funds you have. So all in all, an excellent way of investing, excellent way of developing cash flow for your monthly expenses, but paying attention to caveats.
Thank you, Vasant.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much, Vasant.
Sure.
And actually, I appreciate all of Vasant's comments, and I have a couple of things just to follow up. Actually, Vasant wrote a question as well, and I think that ties in really well with what he was speaking about how do you do background checks on a broker? How do you vet them? I think a good way is to find out if they have a license, like we have a securities license. A broker who is raising money should have a license, so find out if they do. Track record, really important. How many of their loans have paid off successfully? Are their borrowers making payments? That's really, it's not easy to verify all that, but ask them to send some, verification of that. I would check around with the real estate investing community. Find as many investment clubs in an area as you can. Like in Colorado, we have CARI and we have ICOR and IROC, and you can get a reputation of a broker or a hard money lender pretty quickly. Word gets around pretty quick. So that, I think those would all be good ways to vet a broker. The thing I forgot to say is that this is not a place for testimonials, and I appreciate Vasant not giving a testimonial. actually by law and the Securities Exchange Commission, I cannot have lenders get on and give testimonials about my company. So if you are going to talk about, if you are a lender and you'd like to say a few words and you're going to talk about working with a broker, please keep it generic and don't mention any brokers by name, including my company. Okay? And let's see. I think we've got another lender who would like to say something. Gary, I'm sorry, that was Dean. Let me, oops, that's Everett. I'll get it. Gary, can you hear me?
I can
Gary?
hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. This is Gary from Mexico checking in.
3,000 miles away. It's amazing. And a hurricane in the middle of there somewhere.
Would you like to say a few words, Gary?
Well, thank you so much for the presentation. It's you're very professional, and I'm really lucky to have met you. I tried to do it myself for years and years, and the liability of being actually a broker or a realtor broker, it was a relief to have somebody in the middle between me and the actual public there. So it was a great connection, and between you and another broker, myself, I've probably done at least 50, if not 100 of these, and have never ever had one I regretted. So it's a very safe endeavor. You look at what's going on in the world economy. There's very few places where you can put money that's safe, and you can still get a good return. You know, something that's not going to make you rich, but something that's going to pay the bills. And I'm in a condo now that the original owner paid $460,000 for. It's probably worth $360 now, and I'm paying $1,100 a month on it. That's how I'm leveraging my money. My money in the States is doing so much for me, and it opens up all kinds of opportunities in Latin America just because things are soft down here that 10 years ago this would have been impossible. So just a lot of thanks to you, and it's a good presentation. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Gary. Appreciate those words and a good general perspective on private lending, working with a broker too. Let's take another lender now. Dean, can you hear me?
I can.
Hi, Dean.
Good evening, everyone. I guess, David, question if perchance, and fortunately for the gentleman from Mexico, he's done all this lending and never had a problem occur. If there is a foreclosure BK process, is that included in part of your servicing to handle that?
Okay, well, like I said, we handle all loan servicing, and if part of that, I think it was number one or number two, was collecting overdue payments from our borrowers. So if something does go wrong, that's the first step, is trying to collect money and get the note back. I'm going to mute you for a second, Dean.
Okay.
Is to try to collect and keep do everything we can to work things out, of course, in communication with the lender of how we want to approach things, and try to get the borrower current and work out an alternative strategy. And we've done that, where we've had actually just one loan that the borrower made mistakes, didn't list it. They didn't list it on the MLS, tried to sell it themselves, overpriced it, did a beautiful job in fixing up the property, and then they couldn't sell it because they made mistakes. So instead of going down the road of foreclosure, we worked with them in communication with the lender, and right now they have converted it into a rental property, and they're making monthly payments, and we are anticipating a sale within the next few months. However, Dean's question was, if it does go all the way through to foreclosure, where do we handle that? Well, we take it up to the point of filing the notice of election and demand. which is, I mean, that's the step that actually puts them, quote unquote, into the foreclosure process. So with private lending, lenders don't mess around and don't wait for 3 months or 3 years like some banks do to start their foreclosure process. We start it within 2 weeks, or even actually the day that they are late on a payment, we get right on the phone and find out what's going on. And we'll send our first letter out within a week of them being late. We will send another letter out 2 weeks later, and then a third letter out basically demanding if you don't pay, this is going to go to not just collections, but we're going to file the notice of election and demand. So we do that, and then once it gets to that point of filing the notice of election and demand, we can have an attorney start that process for you, or you can use your own. From then on, it's really you're in charge of the process from there. And we don't abandon you. Anything we can do to help, we will be there to assist you with that process. But from that point on, it's yours. Now, yes, are there expenses involved with that? There are, but those you have every right to claim them in your foreclosure filing and recoup those expenses. And very likely you can get back most or all of those expenses in addition to all of your principal as well. Does that answer that, Dean?
Yes, that's satisfactory.
Okay, thank you, Dean. Any other lenders? We have a couple more, maybe one more comment from a current lender before we go to questions. Any other lenders like to say a few words? Okay. Let's open the floor up for any general questions you'd like to ask. If you are more comfortable typing them in, that's fine too. Let me check my screen here to make sure I've answered all the type ones. But would anybody like to ask a question? Okay, anybody? Hi, Michelle, can you hear me? Michelle, are you there? Michelle? Okay. Michelle, if you can hear me and we can get this audio working, put your hand down and then put it up again and we'll try it again. But I see your hand up. I just can't make contact with you. Okay. Can you hear me now? It sounds like you can hear me, but I can't hear you, and I apologize for that. If you would like to type your question in, that's probably the way we're going to need to go. This technology is great, but it's definitely not perfect, and nor is mine here. So I'm gonna see if anyone else has any questions. Anyone else? I'm sorry about that, Michelle. Anyone else want to ask a question? All right, I think we've got one, and hopefully that is Michelle. Oh, from Sherry. And then we've got one from Dean, too. How many loans are we currently handling? Is the quantity high or low compared to the average number? I think we are currently servicing probably about 16 loans right now. I would say that's pretty average for us at the moment. We're heading on 3 years now in the business, and our loan volume is increasing steadily. So that I would say is pretty average for us, and that keeps us pretty busy. But we are pretty good at handling that quantity of loans. Like I said, there's a lot involved with each of them, but we're, I think, doing a pretty good job of that. So thank you for asking that. So a question from Dean. I brought up the concept of pooling funds, and Dean's question is, pooling of funds requires you, the broker, to do what? To get what do I need to do to get the ability to pool? Well, basically, it's going to involve getting an attorney to draw up either a private offering or another kind of offering that is acceptable, that I meet the requirements of the Securities and Exchange Commission. I think the first one would probably be a PPO, or a private placement offering. It would not require any additional licensure for me, but it does require a very stringent legal document and pretty stringent regulations also about how I can advertise that pool. Now, those regulations have been loosened in the past few months, and I can't remember the name of the act that did that. I think it's called the Jobs Act, actually, which enabled people looking for funding to have fewer restrictions on their advertising, and I think that's a good thing. I mean, the restrictions were there to protect the average person, lender, to make sure that they were well protected in the loans they were making, but I think they were a little bit above board, and now there is a little more flexibility in being able to make a private placement offering and to also advertise it a little bit, which is obviously what we would need to do. Let's see what else we got. Okay, any other questions people would like to ask? I'm looking for hands up. Any other electronic hands? Okay, thank you, Michelle. Yeah, Michelle wrote a note that yeah, her phone technology didn't work, but thank you for attending. And her question was asked about the volume of loans. Anybody else have any questions? Anybody? I'm scrolling up and down. Okay, well, Everett has a question. What is our average current loan term? I would say we are doing about 50% 6 to 9 month loans, which are in general for rehab, for fix and flips, and the other 50% are 24-month loan for buy and hold properties. That is a niche of my company, is the 2-year hard money loan. There are lenders on the line who will do some of those longer loans, but some of most of the hard money lenders in Denver, or in Colorado, those who also raise funds, tend to keep their loans at 6 to 9 months. But I have found in the market there is a need for a 2-year loan. It gives someone buying a buy and hold investment a chance to get into the property that needs to be cash flowing, because we won't lend. They have to cover a 12% note rate, and if it's not a cash flowing property at 12%, we won't make the loan. So if it's a good, strong investment property and can cover the note rate, we will make that loan. It gives the borrower more time to refinance the loan. Sometimes we might renew the loan after 2 years. Sometimes they might sell the property. But in general, those buying a buy and hold or an investment property want to hold that property. And this gives them a way to buy a property and give them time to get their bankability up so they can get the loan refinanced. The interest rate on the 24-month loan, again, that's going to be what you're comfortable with, but in general, our everyday terms on that are 12%. So it takes a pretty strong deal to get a property to cash flow at 12%. Most of the time, that's going to be a multifamily property, a 2 to 4 unit or more. But we have a number of those, and those are good loans for us. Do we loan on other assets or only on real estate? In general, we are lending only on real estate. The fact is we have made some other loans. I personally have made an uncollateralized loan. The collateral was an inheritance that was coming in, and I trusted the character of my borrowers, and they did come through. That was my personal funds, though. I would probably not even think of offering that to one of my lenders. And I have also lent on a vehicle, and that is in general not what I do, but it was a special situation, and it's a loan that's actually doing well. But in general, it's going to be a property in Colorado. We don't make loans out of state. It has to be a local or a property in Colorado, so our deed of trust would be in Colorado. And that answers Terry's questions. No, we don't ever do deals outside of Colorado. Actually, we could make a loan for a property outside of Colorado, but the deed of trust would have to be cross-collateralized with a property in Colorado. Any other questions or any other comments? Okay, I think we've maybe coming to the end. I will try to get my contact info up on the screen again. And also just, again, next steps, get in touch with me. We will look to get your money working as quickly as possible. As far as future webinars, this one will be recorded or is being recorded and will be sent out as a link on we will be sending you a follow-up survey in a day or two. It's only 4 questions at the most. If you would take it, that would be great and very helpful to us. And we will also put the link for you to hear the presentation again. Feel free to forward it to anybody you know who might be interested in this type of investment. Thank you for all your thank yous. And if anyone wants to stay on the line, we actually have the webinar space till 9 o'clock. But if nobody writes in a question or raises their hand electronically, I will probably end the webinar within a few minutes. So thank you all very much, and please do keep in touch. And there's my contact information.